start here. This is, of course, a picture of the Earth from space, and the astronauts often talk about the profound experiences they had when they saw the Earth for the first time from outer space. And also, I think collectively as a race, it was a shift in consciousness when we actually saw our planet from space for the first time. And one of the Chinese-American astronauts who went up told the story of the Chinese legend of these men who had been sent to attack a young girl, and they were so struck by her beauty that they turned into her protectors. And this is the story that looking at the Earth for the first time from outer space drew out of him. So I always compare it to this picture. How many people have seen this image before? Good, a good number of us. I would be surprised if that wasn't the case. This is, of course, from Bill Cheswick's work at Lameda, a mapping project that started in toward the turn of the century. This particular picture is from 2001. This is a picture of 100,000 networks, registered or announced networks on the internet, the shortest outgoing routes to those nets from a test computer in New Jersey. And each one of these end nodes, it could be a handful of computers, it could be a small network, it could be a large network. And when I look at this photo, I often remember the pictures from the Hubble. I don't know if anybody's seen these pictures of M31 Andromeda Galaxy, where they found the bulge, and each point of light is hundreds of thousands of stars. It just gives a different perspective on what we're dealing with in terms of cyberspace and in terms of security and risk and what it all means in cyberspace at this point toward the end of the first decade of the 21st century. And so I always start with this quote from Chief Seattle, 1854. It's more timely than it ever was. He said, is a rendition of what he said, but it captures the essence of his remarks. All things are connected like the blood that unites us all. Man did not weave the web of life. He's merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. So the growth of the global economy, there were a lot of things that happened in the 90s that kind of brought the world, accelerated the bringing together of the world in many different ways, economically, the fall of the Soviet Union, the launch of the euro, GATT, NAFTA, and for better and worse, all of these things that brought the world more closely together as a single economy. And we saw in the Asian economic crisis in the late 1990s how, for the first time, you could see global dominoes, how when the dominoes fell one part of the world, they impacted everything everywhere. So, and then when you lay on top of that what it means, Toffler talked about, the third wave, the agrarian civilization, the industrial civilization, and now we're in the information civilization, the information age. And you think about radio took 38 years to reach 50 million people. TV took 13 years. The World Wide Web took only 4 years. That was an astonishing thing at one point. But then the iPod took only 3 years. And Facebook took only 2 years. And when you look at this, these bullet points together, you get a sense of this incredible momentum and this the acceleration and the speed with which our world is transforming. So then, if you look at the global economy and cyberspace, and it's kind of in the 80s, you see them, you draw them as two separate spheres, two separate realms, if you will. And in the 1990s, they began to interpenetrate in some interesting ways. And now I would suggest that really you cannot talk about one without talking about the other. And so what are the implications of that? Well, in the 80s, in the global economy, you had issues of competitors and industrial espionage, and in cyberspace, you had issues about hackers and data theft. And in the 1990s, some of these things started to interpenetrate, and now in the In the 21st century, the global economy, hackers and data theft is also an issue, and in cyberspace, your competitors in industrial espionage, economic espionage is also an issue. So it speaks to how they now occupy the same space and share the same risks. So one of the things that I do is I track cybercrime, and in the 90s, in the early 90s, you would get a story about a cybercrime, a cybersecurity breach, and it would be like you found a ruby or an emerald, and you'd cut it out of the newspaper, you'd cut and paste it, and everybody would share it with your colleagues, and if you had 4 or 5 of these things, you could make an argument to your executives of why you needed more money to buy these new things called firewalls. But the point is they were rare. The stories were rare, and this is one month from earlier this year, from June, July of this year. This is just randomly sampled headlines that intrigued me for some reason or another from a 30-day period earlier this year. This would have been a whole year, maybe 2 years of interesting stories back in the 1990s. And this is another 6 weeks of stories. And you can see the range of them. California Water Company insider steals $9 million, flees country. Corporate espionage email break-in case, Zapp's electronics industry. Ring stole 12 million minutes worth $50 million from telecoms. List of U.S. nuclear facilities inadvertently posted on the web. Air traffic systems vulnerable. Inspector General report states, of course, the GAO, the unclassified version of the GAO assessment of the air traffic control system, which was published in the 1990s, would turn your hair gray, the unclassified version. So this is where we are now, 20 years into this. And part of how we got here is there are a lot of false memes, false notions about cybersecurity, which we had to spend a lot of time, I would say, 10 years debunking. And some of them so widespread and commonly held, so pervasive that you could tell somebody the opposite and they think that you said this. I mean, for instance, insiders are 80% of the problem, outsiders are only 20% of the problem. There are still people that will tell you that. And so people say to me, well, what is it? And I say, well, it's more like 80% and 80%. And yes, that's an impossible statement, but what I'm trying to say is it doesn't work like that. It's not a pie. And even if it was, at this point, what an insider is versus what an outsider is has changed dramatically. So you're always, in working in security and studying security, whether you're in a corporation trying to bring security to a global enterprise, or you're studying security as your future in technology or in business, you have to understand there are these false memes out there that really get in the way of something powerful happening.